Hello again to all my food warriors and welcome back to the channel. Today we are shifting gears a little bit. We're going to take a break tonight from Italian and we're going to go right to Japan. And what we're making today is Gyudon beef. It's a very traditional Japanese dish. It's a Japanese beef stew of sorts. And it's something that I think is reminiscent of kind of Japanese fast food. And from what I've read, Gyudon beef is one of those dishes where they actually serve in service stations across Japan. So if you are traveling by car and you want to pull off and have a quick meal, this is one of those quick meals that they serve en route while you're traveling by vehicle in Japan. And so sometimes, you know what, you're out shopping and it's what you see in the store that's really going to dictate what you're going to have for dinner. And that was the case with me today. We were out shopping and we saw some interesting things that look good and immediately made me think of this dish. And so here we go. What we have here is a decent sized flank steak. This one here is about I'd say maybe a little over a kilo. So I'd say maybe about 2.5 pounds, give or take. And what I want to do with this is I want to cut this very, very thin. And normally when I cook flank steak, whether on the grill, on the griddle, in a pan, you want to make sure you cook it nice and rare. This is something that's going to be cooked well done and all the way through, as it is a stewed item, and it will have an opportunity to tenderize as it's being cooked. So what I'm going to do with my flank steak here is I'm going to make one cut right down the middle, because I do want some bite-sized pieces. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to cut these nice and thin across the grain. So the grain of the flank steak is running this way. By cutting against the grain, this will end up very, very tender as it cooks. So all I'm going to do here is just cut this up into very thin pieces. Now this is a very versatile recipe. You can use flank steak, you can use skirt steak, you can use hanger steak. You can even use brisket in a pinch. Normally, you don't need to use a cut that is going to be very, very tender. Flank steak, even if cooked well done, tends to get a little bit tough, but because this is in a moist medium, this will be tender in terms of the end product. And so what we want to do is just cut this up very quickly into bite-sized pieces. This will easily feed, a flank steak of this size will easily feed 8 people. And in keeping with what we do on this channel, there's a lot of batch cooking where we have an opportunity to have dinner tonight, and we have an opportunity to have, whether it's another dinner or lunches throughout the week. And so as we see here, as we cut this up, this is going to yield a good bit of lean protein. Now as I have this cut up, what I want to do is just get a bowl here. I want to get all of my sliced flank steak and put it into a bowl, because we are going to season this before we go to the pan. And so I'm going to take the other half of my flank steak. I can hear my rice cooker is done. What I've got in my rice cooker is 5 cups of sushi rice. That's 5 cups of uncooked sushi rice that I've run under cold water at least 4 or 5 times. Sushi rice is a short grain rice, and it is fairly starchy, and so what we want to do is make sure that we wash off all of that surface starch when we cook our sushi rice, and ultimately finish it with our vinegar in the same manner that we would if we were preparing sushi. We want to make sure we have grains that are not mushy, but that are separate and a little bit chewy. That's really the consistency that you want. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to serve this not just with a little bit of sushi rice, but with some beautifully sautéed greens as well. There we are. So as you can see, a fair bit of lean protein from one flank steak. This will easily feed 8, if not 10 hungry people. And so we're just going to get this right in our bowl. Now I'm going to move this out of the way. There we are. Now to this, what I'm going to add is a little bit of soy sauce and a little bit of sesame oil. And all I want to do is basically create a quick marinade in our bowl. So what I want to do is add maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons of a good quality soy sauce. In this case, I have a good organic tamari. And then I'm also going to be adding a little bit of toasted sesame oil, maybe, let's say 2 tablespoons of that. And now all I want to do is just make sure that this is completely coated. This is what will flavor our meat. And we are going to get, there we are, our pan on the heat. And what I'm going to do here is I want to sear off our meat so I can get a nice flavorful crust, a good bit of caramelization on the meat. And then what I'm going to do is remove the meat from the pan, and then we'll get our vegetables in. Once our vegetables have cooked down, we're going to return the meat to the pan and then add our braising liquid. This is really a relatively quick stew as far as stews go. The fact that the meat has been cut down as small as it has, I mean, these are all bite-sized pieces, so these will cook very quickly, and they will stew and soften very quickly as well. So as our pan is heating up, I have a little bit of avocado oil because I am going to be cooking on high heat. So all I want to do is add maybe I got 3 tablespoons to the pan. We're going to let that heat up, and then we're going to add in our flank steak. There we are. There we are. So I'm going to let this go for about 7 or 8 minutes, just until I can get some beautiful color on my steak, and I will see you in about 7 or 8 minutes. All right, we are back. Our beef is just about there, so we're going to start preparing our vegetables. So what I have here, 3 white onions. All we're going to do with these, we're going to cut them right down the middle, and we are going to cut these relatively thin. So these, as you see, very thin. These will cook very quickly, and these will add a good bit of body and a good bit of sweetness to our stew. In addition to onions, I've also got some beautiful mushrooms. We will get our onions ready to go. There we are. Alright, I think our beef is just about there. I'm just going to turn the heat off on that for a moment. So we've got 3 white onions that we've cut up. We've got some beautiful mushrooms. Here I've got a couple of containers here of these beautiful oyster mushrooms. These are beautifully clean, organic oyster mushrooms, and all I want to do is just cut these up very, very rough, because these are almost bite-sized as they are, and so I do want to maintain the integrity of the mushrooms. Now these just happen to look good in the market today, and so this is what I bought, but I've made this recipe with all kinds of different mushrooms, everything from enoki to button mushrooms, cremini mushrooms, chestnut mushrooms, both wild and cultivated. They all work really, really well in this application. Today, I've got a mix of 2 different mushrooms. I've got my beautiful oyster mushrooms, and then I've got some king oyster mushrooms as well that we're going to use. So again, all we're going to do here is just cut these up very, very coarsely. We want to make sure that these stay identifiable in the dish. That way, you've got that beautiful visual appeal in addition to everything else. You eat with the eyes first, and we want to make sure that all of our dishes are as visually appealing as possible. So now we've got some beautiful king oyster mushrooms. These are beautiful, big, meaty mushrooms. That all we're going to do is we're just going to cut these up very, very, again, very coarsely. We want to keep a very rustic feel for our dish. So all we're going to do is we're going to cut these in half, and then literally just cut these in relatively big pieces, as we want to make sure that we can maintain some of that texture. There we are. So I'm going to finish cutting up these mushrooms, and then I will see you in about 1 minute. All right, as you can see, all of our vegetables are beautifully cut up. We've got our meat that we've put into this bowl just to rest for a moment. Now there will be some resting juices that collect at the bottom of that bowl. Don't throw that away when we put this back in the pan. That will form the basis of the gravy. So what we're going to do now is get this back on the heat. This time we'll put good 4 or 5 tablespoons of our avocado oil, and we are going to get all of our vegetables into the pan. Looks like a lot of veg. This is going to cook down, and this will be really the heart and the body of our stew. Now the only thing I added to our meat while it was cooking was just a little bit of freshly cracked black pepper. That's it. We have our salt coming from our soy sauce that we added into our meat, and we've got some beautiful nuttiness coming from that toasted sesame oil. Oh, got a couple of guys who are trying to escape here, so we will just let this go. Now I am going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to this. There we are, so just a little bit of salt, not too much. All I want to do is just start to get the liquid to leach out of those vegetables as I'm cooking them down. A little bit of freshly cracked black pepper as well. There we are. And that's it. Now we're going to give this a toss, and we're going to get some of our flavoring agents ready to add in there as well. Now this is going to take, I'd say, easily a good 12 to 15 minutes to cook down. I want to cook this down over, I'd say, a good medium-high heat. Not only do I want to cook down these vegetables, but I want to get a little bit of color on them as well. And so we're going to let them do their thing, but as we do, we've got a couple of seasonings here. So we've got a few cloves of garlic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take maybe 3 cloves of garlic. I've got a couple of chilies. I'm going to put these off to the side. And then we've got a couple of thumb-sized pieces of ginger here as well. So I'd say equal parts garlic to ginger and a couple of chilies. Japanese food isn't all that spicy by nature, but I like a little bit of heat. Certainly in this dish, it's really a winter type dish, and it's great if it has, in my opinion, a little bit of heat kind of humming through it. So all I want to do is just kind of crush this down. I'm going to start with our ginger, and all I'm doing here is just breaking the fibers of the ginger. Oh, get back here. There we are. And we've got one more. Hey, this can get a little bit physical here, but there we are. There we are. Now that we have these crushed down, all we want to do is cut these up, and we're going to do the same with our garlic. Oh, you smell those mushrooms cooking? It smells absolutely fantastic. There we are. So we've got our ginger, and we're going to do the same to our garlic here. Just give these guys a quick crush. This guy's a little big, so maybe we'll do it 2 separate. There we are. There we are. And so we will cut this up fine as well. All right. And now what we will do, just to make sure that these are cut up fine, is we will run our knife through this whole pile. There we are. So before we finish up, we do have our chilies. So I'm going to cut these 2 chilies up right into this pile. There we are. I'm going to give this a stir. stir. Oh. Just smells absolutely gorgeous. There we are. So we are going to give this all right. We are there. Now all of this is going right into our pan. And as this hits the heat, the whole kitchen is going to get a lot more fragrant. There we are. So now we are going to let this go for another 10 minutes at least until our vegetables are cooked down. And so I will see you in about 10 minutes. All right, we are back. As you can see, all of our vegetables have cooked down. The water has come out of the onions and the mushrooms and has completely evaporated, so all of those flavors are now completely intensified in our pan. Now, as you can see, the bulk of this dish is really plant-based. So a lot of vegetables here, but because of the texture of the mushrooms and the sweetness of the onions and how complementary those will be with the meat, you will not miss any more protein than is in this dish. So we're now going to return all of our meat back to the pan. There we are, along with all of the resting juices. And that is what's going to give us that depth and concentration of flavors. There we are. All right, put that off to the side, and we will give this, again, a thorough mix. And now we will be adding in our braising liquid. So what I have here, in terms of my braising liquid, this is a ½ cup each of tsuyu sauce. Tsuyu is the sauce that you actually use when you're preparing soba noodles, to dip the soba noodles in. I use a ½ cup of tsuyu sauce. I use a ½ cup of Japanese mirin, which is a sweetened rice wine. And I have about 1.25 cups of a good quality organic beef broth, completely no salt added. The tsuyu is a little bit salty, and we've had a little bit of soy sauce in our beef that we used as our marinade earlier, so that is all the salt that we need. And so when I'm using my beef broth in this instance, completely no salt added. Now this will give us all of the braising liquid that we need for this amount of Gyudon beef. Here we are. And we will just let this braise and simmer away until our liquid has reduced by about 75 to 80%. So this will take us, I'd say, probably a good 15 minutes or so. And so we will just let that go. And this pan will basically take care of itself. All right. So now what we're gonna make with this, we are gonna make a beautiful pan of greens as well. So what I have here, I went to my Asian supermarket today and I found these beautiful pea shoots. So what these are just the tips of the pea plant. And these are perfectly edible. You can stir fry these. They are absolutely fantastic. And so we're gonna cook these very, very quickly in a separate pan. We're just gonna saute these in a little bit of our avocado oil over high heat with some of the complementary flavors that we have in our stew here. So we're gonna start things off again with a couple of cloves of garlic. Just give these a crush. There we are. We've got a couple of thumb-sized pieces of ginger. Just give these a little crush as well. There we are. And we've got our 1 chili pepper. So all we're going to do here is just cut this up in the same manner that we cut them up for the stew. There we are. There we are. As you can see, I have a pretty good sized colander here full of my greens. Now you can use really any kind of green in this application. I've used spinach, I've used broccolini. I've used gailan, which is the Chinese broccoli. I've used these pea shoots before. I've used a number of different Asian greens, yu choy. They all work well. They all work well. You can either steam them, or as I like to do, because these are very leafy and they cook very quickly, just a quick stir fry over high heat is all you need. And so we're going to just give this, there we are, make sure this is minced nice and fine. We're going to add in our chili pepper here. Now again, our chili pepper completely optional, unless you live in my house where it's absolutely mandatory. There we are. So we'll just give this one final there we are. So we will get our frying pan in our heat. While that's heating up, we will just give this a stir. And the smell of this is absolutely outrageous. For such few humble ingredients, this is one of those dishes that absolutely packs a wicked punch. I'm telling you, this hits different. On a cold day, you get yourself a bowl of this, it'll set you straight. There we are. So our pan is heating up. We will get our avocado oil, and again, you're probably looking at maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons. Now all I've done with these is I've given them a good wash under cold running water, and I'm just going to get them right into our pan. Now, the liquid that's on the leaf, any excess water, I haven't spun these dry or anything, you want some of that liquid because that will help the leaves wilt as they're cooking over high heat. So before I add in our pea shoots, I'm just going to put in our flavorings here, our garlic, our ginger, and our chilies. And we're just going to give this, there we are, just a quick stir in our oil. We want all of this to flavor our oil so that as the oil coats the greens, all of the flavorings go along with it. There we are. And now we're going to get these guys right into the pan. Now this will look like a lot going in. This will all cook down to one layer in our pan. There we are. A couple of guys that tried to escape here. Everybody in the pool. There we are. So my Gyudon beef is starting to thicken. This will go for about 7 or 8 minutes, and we should be ready to go right about the same time. So I will see you in about 7 or 8 minutes. All right, home stretch. Our pea shoots, beautifully sauteed. I'm going to give these guys just a quick taste right now. All I added to that was just a pinch of salt and pepper. They taste like fresh peas. Just absolutely fantastic. I've got my sushi rice here out of my rice cooker. So we are just going to get this rice ready to go. I'm going to put this into my bowl. And then to my sushi rice, I started out here with 5 cups of uncooked sushi rice that I cooked in my rice cooker. For every cup of uncooked rice, I have here about a quarter cup of, this is seasoned rice wine vinegar. So what I want to do is really recreate that feeling of sushi. And so what I'm going to do, I've got a cup and a half here, a cup and a quarter rather, a cup and a quarter of my seasoned rice wine vinegar. And all I'm going to do is just pour this right over my rice. Now, if you didn't have seasoned rice wine vinegar, you can certainly use regular rice wine vinegar with the addition of a little bit of salt and sugar. But I found a brand that I like that isn't overly seasoned from the point of view of all the salt and the sugar. And so what I do is I simply cut that vinegar right into my sushi rice. And this will allow the rice to really fluff up. And this is what's going to make sure that all of my grains are beautifully separate. Just going to give this one final toss. Oh, this is looking absolutely stellar. Beautiful rich gravy. Oh, just the smell is absolutely phenomenal. We are almost there. This is about literally 1 minute away. So I think we have timed this perfectly. So we're just going to continue to cut our vinegar into our rice. This is going to allow our rice to release a little bit of that steam and to soak up the vinegar. And really, this is going to be a fantastic accompaniment to our stew. I don't know if sushi rice is traditional from the point of view of how they eat Gyudon beef in Japan, but I find it, certainly to my palate, I think it's a very, very complimentary part of this dish. I think this is certainly more flavorful than putting this over just a bed of steamed rice. This gives it a lot more character, and this is a very rich stew, and so I think the vinegar in the rice certainly helps cut the richness of that stew. There we are. I think we are ready to go. Oh, the smell of that rice, I love that. So I'm just going to give this a quick taste. I like that. All right. I think we are there, off the heat, and now we're going right to the plate. So I'm going to start off with a beautiful bed of my sushi rice. There we are. All right, and on top of that, I will get right in there with my Gyudon beef and some of that beautiful gravy. Oh, look at that. I want to make sure I get some of these vegetables here as well, and maybe a little spoon of our gravy. There we are. And then to accompany that, we will go in with some of these beautifully sautéed greens. Oh. Now this is what I'm talking about here. So we've already gone in to taste those greens. Mushroom, a little bit of our beef. Now when you say melt in your mouth, that is absolutely melt in your mouth tender. And the beauty is, you've got the meatiness of the mushroom as well, which gives you that illusion of really being a substantial dish for which it is. The flavors are intense, cut beautifully with the acidity of the rice and these beautiful greens. Just freshens up the whole dish. I do hope you try it. This is an absolute winner. One of my absolute favorites. As always, please feel free to like and subscribe. Do share the content if you find it at all useful, as that is the intent behind this channel. And as always, this is Coach Joe saying I will see you on the next one.